We have that and more now with Jonathan Conricus, who joins us, the former spokesperson for the IDF. Colonel Conricus, good to have you as always on the show. Tonight we happen to be in Dubai. I will ask you a question about these cluster munitions, about it, whether that's kind of a new weapon that complicates things in Israel. Smaller bombs, they kind of explode midair. You get, as I understand it, kind of almost droplets of bombs falling. Is that harder and more dangerous for Israel to defend itself against?
Yeah, good evening to you, and shalom from Tel Aviv, from Israel. Usually people tell me to be safe, but this is probably a unique opportunity for me to tell a journalist and broadcaster that I hope you're safe and I hope you have shelters nearby, because I know how much the Iranians have been firing missiles at Dubai and at Abu Dhabi and many other capitals in the region. And I've seen, the success so far of Emirati air defenses, and I hope they get even better. To the point, yes, this is a new weapon, relatively new weapon, not a strategic surprise, not something that we didn't know, but this is a new weapon that the Iranians have introduced. Of course, by definition, really a war crime and in complete violation of international law. It's a missile that they fire indiscriminately at civilian areas that then disperses at a certain altitude above the ground and basically fragments into different bombs. Now, the bombs themselves, the parts, the cluster bombs, they're less potent than the other Iranian missiles that we've seen, and they've impacted in Israel and basically demolished entire houses and brought down structures. What happens is usually that these will create bigger craters, more shrapnel. Right. So if you're out and about, that's very bad news, because these bombs, they cover a big area. And unfortunately, today, two civilians in Israel were killed in central Israel by a bomb like that. And we're anticipating more. If you've seen the footage, perhaps, of this, looks like fireworks falling out of the sky, raining towards the ground. Those are the what it looks like during the night. Dangerous munitions, but we are intercepting almost all of the ballistic missiles that the Iranians are firing. And I'm happy to say that they have fewer and fewer launchers to launch and fewer missiles to fire.
Yeah, I'm happy to say as well, you talked about Dubai, that there was a big decrease for whatever reason, especially in drones fired in today versus yesterday. You don't want to jump ahead of yourself and say there's a trend. We'll see what tomorrow brings, but I thought that was interesting. The other thing I really wanted to ask you about was this strike on the oil depot, or depots, that the Israelis carried out over the weekend. We saw a lot of the video of that, and now there are new reports. For example, Axios had a report today that on the American side, maybe they're not so thrilled with this, that there could be, to some extent, a notion of going too far, going beyond what the U.S. had expected Israel to do, and a move that could strategically backfire in the view of some. What would you say?
I take reports from that specific Israeli reporter in the US with a bit of caution. It's a bit sensationalist, and I'm not entirely sure that it is reflective of the true sentiment between the US military and Israel, or at the political level. Having said that, the target that was struck was a military target. Why so? Because these were fuel depots that the IRGC uses and are essential for the IRGC war activities. So they were not civilian. This isn't something that affects, gas prices for civilians in Iran. This is something that impedes the IRGC's capacity to conduct military operations. But I'll add something that official Israel hasn't said, but I think it's part of the reasoning behind it. I think this was also kind of a message to the Iranians that we see what you're doing. We see that you're striking oil facilities and refineries and depots around the Middle East. We've seen you fire towards Haifa, where we have our oil refineries. And your infrastructure is not beyond our reach. On the contrary, we can hit everything we want. We've just refrained from doing it so far. That's one component. Second component, I bet also that there's the issue here of a bit of shock and awe and psychological warfare to show the Iranian people how helpless and how incapable the Iranian regime is in defending its own airspace, and to understand that they are really exposed, and really to drive that message home, which is something that you do when you're fighting a war.
All right, Jonathan, always good to see you. I have to run right now, but I hope we talk again soon as the conflict continues. Jonathan Conricus live tonight from Tel Aviv.